welcome to episode 9 of The Smallest Thing. I'm Lisa Manterfield. This week, I want to tell you more about the true story of the real Emmott Syddall and Roland Torre, and about the role their meeting place played in the story of Eyam during the plague. But first, our own Em and Ro have their own meeting, as Em puts her plan together. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of The Smallest Thing. Welcome to the serialized audiobook, The Smallest Thing, written by Lisa Manterfield, read for you by Charlie Sanderson.
Chapter 9. Friday, July the 29th. By the end of the week, word arrives that the air quality and soil tests have come back negative. Whatever is making people sick, it isn't something toxic in the air or the ground. They tore up my garden for nothing, Dad says, looking forlorn. Other news filters through too, but not much of it is good. They're tallying the dead and broadcasting statistics like they're reading off the weekend football results. Barely a week into our quarantine and the score is already dead 14, infected 32. Every time the news comes on, Mum rings, more panicked than ever. Dad and I take it in turns to reassure her that A, we're fine, and B, she should stay exactly where she is. What's most worrying is the pattern of victims. It started with the 2 elderly residents, then hopped to Dr. Spencer and his neighbours, picking its way through 2 entire families, but leaving Dr. Spencer's wife, Louise, unaffected. But now it's popped up in a house at the other end of the village and a farmhouse just inside the quarantine zone. In both cases, only 2 people in each house have contracted it, which suggests it's more random than they first told us. If they've spotted a relationship between the victims, they're several steps ahead of me. I tell Dad I'm going to look for mosaic pieces now that the ground is safe to touch again. He's hesitant at first, but doesn't argue. I'm sure he's as sick of me rumbling around the house as I am of being captive. He insists I wear my mask and gloves, reminds me not to get too close to anyone, not to eat anything, and not to touch my face. I start to object, but he makes a good point. Even though air and ground pollution have been eliminated as the culprit, there is still a long list of other possibilities, one of which will prove to be the offender. I think you should wear your sunglasses too, he adds. Can't hurt to protect your eyes. The sunglasses are a bit much, but I don't argue. My goal now is to keep under Dad's radar while I put my plan in place, which means doing as little as possible to annoy him. I pull up my mask, put on my white gloves, and put on my sunglasses. I catch a glimpse of myself in the hall mirror as I leave. Apart from my blonde hair, I look exactly like Michael Jackson. Still, Dad's overprotection will serve as a very handy disguise for the plan I'm beginning to brew. It's eerily quiet out in the village. Most people are staying in, and the only activity is centred around the temporary medical unit inside the village hall and the school where Quarantine HQ has been set up. On a sunny day like today, Eyam would normally be bustling. The road would be full of cars looking for parking or passing through to a nearby beauty spot. There'd be packs of hikers heading off into the hills with backpacks full of sandwiches and cereal bars, and cyclists whizzing around. The tea rooms and shops would be buzzing with tourists out for a day of tea, cakes and trinket hunting. And the villagers would be out in their gardens, going to war with the endless weeds, stopping now and then to gossip over the wall with a neighbour. On a normal day, Dad would be in his allotment or guiding his ladies on one of his tours, and Mum would be on the back patio, marking her students' homework and trying to get a bit of colour on her legs. Alice would be outside playing or down at the park with a friend. And on a spectacular day like today, I'd be out with Deb and our friends on the village green, or maybe up in Cooklet Dell fooling around with Ro. I used to think life in this village was simple and boring, but I'd take simple and boring over complicated and frightening any day. As soon as I'm out of sight of the house, I text Ro. He's key to my plan, and I need to test his loyalty to my cause. I'll admit I'm surprised when he agrees to come, but I don't kid myself that it's anything but curiosity and daring that drives him. It's the latter I'm counting on most. We both know crossing the quarantine boundary is strictly forbidden. Alien Boy made that quite clear. But the rules don't say anything about standing near the border and looking at someone on the other side. Our rendezvous will give me a chance to scope out the territory and test my plan for flaws. To my dad, don't be a rebel means don't break the rules and cause me any trouble. To me, it means bend the rules as far as you need without getting caught, and if all else fails, snap them in two. My rules are about to get flexible. As I make my way to the path, the white delivery van rolls up the road towards me. It looks official, so I keep walking past the gate as if I have a purpose elsewhere in the village. The van stops outside a row of cottages and a suited alien hops out. He pulls a stack of boxes from the open loading door, resting them on the step. The boxes have red crosses printed on the side, like the kind you see on the news, handed out in third world countries. Disaster relief for the unfortunate and needy. So that's what's become of us. We're a charity case now. It seems impossible that any sort of personality can show through those sealed layers of material. What are those things even made of? Vinyl, Teflon, polyplasto super-duper something? I haven't the first clue. And yet this alien seems familiar. As it turns my way, I glimpse his eyes and realise it's the same one who brought the information to our door. I'm hoping he won't recognise me, but he raises one hand and parts his fingers in a Vulcan salute. Apparently he has a sense of humour, something that's been sorely lacking around here lately. Cursing my bad luck, I lift my hand and give a cursory wave back, not wanting to make a fool of myself by proving I have zero dexterity finger-wise. The visible strip of his face crinkles into a smile. Even though I can only see his eyes, I can tell it's a wicked smile, but wicked in a good way, friendly and a bit cheeky. His tiger eyes light up as he hurries toward me. "All right, London," he says. His voice is raspy and echoes in the chamber of his respirator. "How you doing?" "Fine," I say, smiling that he remembered my hoodie. I don't have time to get caught up in a gossip session, though. I have things to do, and standing around chit-chatting with a man in a bubble is not on my list. He glances at my name tag, another item of protocol that's been laid on us. "Emmott?" he asks. "That's an excellent name." I'm aware that his eyes have not left my name tag, which is clipped to the pocket of my jacket just over my left breast, and the thought that he might not be looking at the tag at all infuriates me. "It's a family name," I tell him. "My great-great-grandma's?" I nod toward the churchyard, where my namesake has lain for over a century. "Aidan," he says. He taps the front of his suit, where he's now written his name in black Sharpie, along with a cartoon that I assume is supposed to be him. Clearly, it's an attempt to make himself appear more approachable. The face has spiky hair and a giant smile. Small dots that I think are supposed to be freckles decorate a sharp triangular nose. The cartoon doesn't have what you'd call a handsome face, but it's definitely a friendly one. "According to my mum, I'm named after a Chelsea midfielder," he says. "I'll try to make up a better story if it will help." "You're from London?" I ask. "Born and raised." He holds out his gloved hand, and I'm about to shake it when he pulls it back. Avoiding shaking hands is on the long list of precautions we've been issued. I can't see that it would matter if both people were wearing gloves, but Deb says we should be cautious of everything until they work out what we really can and cannot do. "Sorry," he says. "That was idiotic." But in the space where our hands almost touched, something happens. Like an invisible sponge ball has come between us, pushing our hands apart. A strange sensation worms up my arm, heat travelling through my body the way a hot drink travels down your throat and warms your stomach on a cold day. That's exactly how it feels now, except the sensation doesn't stop at my stomach. It keeps heading south. "Listen, I think I might have been a bit abrupt with you the other day," he says. I shrug. "You're just doing your job." "My job is supposed to be a humanitarian," he says. but it's not easy to be warm and fuzzy sealed inside one of these. I'm sure. I stand there forcing a patient smile and hoping he'll get the hint that I want him to leave. I just wanted to say that, well, I'm here to help. If you need anything, I'll do what I can. Just ask. I am so unbelievably tempted to tell him that a one-way ticket to somewhere a long, long way from here would be really useful, but I can tell he's just trying to make the best of a bad situation. I might be stuck here, but he came of his own accord. Why, I can't imagine. And the least I can do is appreciate that he's trying to help. Thanks, I say, and I mean it. He smiles again, this time holding my gaze for an uncomfortable moment too long, as if he has more to say but can't. My face burns, and I'm surprised when my heart thuds a little faster. What is wrong with me? My life is on the line and I'm getting my knickers in a twist over a man in a plastic suit. And yet, my senses slow down. It's as if I'm moving through water. And even though my brain tells me to walk away, my legs have no intention of moving. He's finally called away by another alien, and the tension inside me dissolves, leaving room for the guilt to unfold. I'm on my way to meet Ro, my boyfriend. I'm acting like a silly kid around this guy, and I'm not even available, let alone interested in him. But it's like they say, you always want what you can't have. And human connection, making out, holding hands, or even getting close enough to whisper sweet nothings in someone's ear is strictly forbidden. The lack of physical contact is starting to affect my brain. Honestly, I'd sell my little sister for an elbow bump right now. As I resume my route to Cooklet Delph, I can tell I'm walking funny, as if the communication between my legs and my brain has been lost. And though I don't turn around to check, I know the alien boy, Aiden, is watching me go. It's not until I'm past the church and halfway up the hill that I realise what a prize idiot I am. If I'm hoping to push at the edges of the rules, the last thing I need to do is single myself out to one of them, especially one who might actually notice if I went missing. At the top of the path, I take a last glance over my shoulder and slip between the rocks into Cooklet Delph. The grassy, tree-rimmed valley looks exactly as I remember it, as if I've slipped through a time warp, back to when everything was normal. I can almost pretend Ro will come across the fields from his family's farm to meet me, that we'll find a hidden spot among the trees to be together, that I'll get to feel the warmth and electricity of another human body against mine. At the bottom is the stream, looking just as it's always done. The quarantine map in my pocket might show a harsh red line, but in the real world, the stream is still a stream, just a band of running water that I could easily wade across. I text Ro to see if he's close, and I jump when I hear the ping of a text alert in the trees on the opposite side. I press against the wall, like a spy in an old black and white thriller, praying there's no one else around to hear it. There's movement in the trees, and a moment later, Ro slips into view. His head flits from side to side, like a rabbit on the lookout for hunters, and then he steps out into full view. I remind myself we're not breaking any rules, that we're too far apart to even speak, and I step out so he can see me too. He looks like a mirage, like a long, tall drink of water in a dry, dry wasteland. Something ordinary and desirable, but utterly unattainable. And beaming out of the centre of his being is the courage I've been looking for, the hint of my rebel that I need now. But the thing I want most is his freedom, and I have to focus on my mission. I need to find out what would happen if I ran, just put one foot in front of the other and bolted for freedom. What would I find on the other side? I get my answer immediately. Across the stream, a figure moves through the trees. He's dressed in green fatigues and combat boots, a dark beret pulled to one side of his head. Slung across one shoulder is a rifle. From his crisp body movements and cropped hair, I can tell he's a soldier on patrol. He follows the course of the little river, his eyes scanning back and forth, across the quarantine border. I press myself back against the rocks until I'm sure he's moved out of sight. Ro has gone. I stare at the spot in the trees where I last saw him, and I will him to come back. Nothing moves except a flicker of leaves in the breeze, a gentle rustle that sounds to me as if the trees are laughing at my stupidity. I want to text him, to tell him it's safe to come back, but I don't know for sure that it is, and I can't risk getting either of us in trouble. Pulling the quarantine map from my pocket, I follow the soldier's route with my finger. A little further along, the red line and the river diverge, and the artificial border dives down a ravine and continues on the other side. In the opposite direction, the border crosses a small lane into the village. My guess is his patrol ends at those 2 points, and, sure enough, a few minutes later, he's back. I watch for a while longer, timing his passes back and forth, like the very slow swing of a pendulum. After the second pass, Roe emerges from the trees. He pushes his long hair from his face and levels a defiant gaze at me. That look tells me all I need to know, that if I'm looking for a partner in crime, I'll find one in Roe. I stuff the map back into my pocket and send him a text. "You look good," is all I can think to say. "As soon as this is over, I'm coming for you," he replies. It's all I can do not to drop everything and sprint across the boundary into his arms. But of all of the things I might be, an idiot isn't one of them. "Soon," I text back, but what I'm thinking is, sooner than you realise. Before the soldier returns, we say our goodbyes, and I slip back down into the village, stopping along the way to pick up some interesting stones to show to Dad if he asks about my mosaic haul. When I pop through the gate by the churchyard, Aidan is waiting. I swear under my breath. I am a prize idiot after all. "Hiya," he says. "You alright?" His friendly tone is forced, and his greeting lands at my feet like a javelin. A little bit closer and it would have pierced right through me. His eyes narrow as if he's trying to focus on my innermost secrets. His gaze is so sharp I can't hide anything from it, and my guilt bubbles like a mouthy traitor inside me. His eyes examine mine and he looks as if he's trying to decide what to say next. Will he dare to ask me what I'm doing? Or will he accuse me outright and march me into custody? Does he even have the right to do that? I root my feet to the ground, ready for a fight. I have rights and I'm ready to defend them. "Listen," he says. "It's not my job to lay down the law or anything." He taps an official Red Cross sticker on his chest in the spot where the 2 pieces of tape used to be. "I'm just here to help, but I am supposed to report anything." He shifts in his suit like he's searching for the right thing to say. "Suspicious," he says. "I'm not doing anything wrong." It comes out way more defensive than intended. I fumble in my jeans pocket and pull out the grubby cloth bag of stones as proof. He frowns. "I make mosaics," I say. "Look, I'm not suggesting you're up to anything, but I'd be careful if I were you. People are a bit jumpy at the moment. Nobody's really sure what this is yet, and they're not taking any chances. If they thought someone was breaking protocol..." He glances over my shoulder at the path to Cooklet Delph. My instinct is to keep lying, but I know he's onto me, so I keep my mouth shut. "Just be careful, that's all. I'd hate for you to find yourself in trouble." I don't know what he means by trouble, but I can't get my voice to ask him. "Like I say, we don't know much about this yet. We don't even know where it's coming from or how it's spreading. Better safe than sorry is all I'm saying. One Emmott Syddall in the churchyard is enough, don't you think?" I manage a quick nod to let him know I understand. I'm sure he intended to be helpful and reassuring, but a cold, hard fact stares me in the face. If I don't go soon, I might not get out of here alive. The trickiest part of the plan I'm forming will be navigating our local train station at Grindleford. It's well over a mile from the quarantine zone, surrounded by woods, and you can see the train coming from a couple of miles down the track, so hiding out and slipping onto the train shouldn't be a problem. I know the station well because I used to help out in the cafe there for a bit of extra money. The problem is that everyone around here knows everyone else, and the cafe staff definitely know me. I can't assume they won't turn me in if they recognise me. The second problem is that the place is popular with hikers and day trippers, and it's often full of people. The fewer people who see me, the better. What I could really use is a lookout to scope it out while I hide. I just need one brave person I can trust. When Ro pops up on my screen, I can barely contain my relief. He's sprawled on his bed, his long dark hair fanning out behind him. He's wearing the t-shirt from the concert we went to last month, the night Deb had an asthma attack and almost blew my cover because my parents thought I was at her house. Ro wanted to take me home, to march in and tell my dad we'd been out together and dare him to forbid it. I talked him out of it, fabricating an elaborate lie about why I hadn't come straight home when the ambulance came for Deb. But it's that rebel streak in Ro that I need now because, outside the quarantine, he's the best hope I have for escape. "Sorry I didn't stay long," he says. "That soldier looked serious and I didn't feel like getting shot." I smile as if everything about this conversation is normal. Completely understand. I have to say you were a sight for sore eyes. You don't look ill, and you definitely don't look contagious, unless drop-dead gorgeous is catching. I force a laugh I don't feel. Over the years, I've tried various tactics for getting my way with people. Sometimes they've worked, sometimes not so much. Tears are a no-no in this situation. There's no way Ro's going to help a weepy female. Given what I know about Ro, flirtation and a dare are good bets. Maybe I should just leave, I say, testing the water. "I would," he says. "I mean, really, what's to stop you just leaving right now?" "You, I think, if you don't help me." But I don't say it. Don't think I haven't thought about it. All I need is someone to keep watch, and I could do it. I could get on a train in Grindleford and be gone. "Where would you go?" I'm about to say Auntie Margie's, but something stops me. I know that trust has to be a two-way thing, but the less Ro knows about my plan, the more watertight it will be. "Maybe somewhere hot, where I can lay on the beach all day?" I say, keeping things light. "How's about Greece?" he says. "Or Spain? Or Tahiti? Australia?" I turn on my full power flirting. I hate to resort to cheap tricks, but desperate times call for desperate measures. "Maybe we could find an uninhabited island and start our own colony," I say. He laughs. "If only." But I'm not laughing. I have to take my chance now, while his guard is down. "We could do it," I say, "if we're careful." He looks at me and his eyes narrow. "You're not serious, are you?" "About Tahiti? No. But what's to keep me from leaving? Really?" He pulls the edge of his lip between his teeth and considers me. "The quarantine?" "But the quarantine's just an idea. You saw. I could cross that stream in Cooklet Delph and be outside the zone in minutes. There's nothing physical to stop me." "Except an armed guard?" "Who passes every 6 minutes in one direction and 11 in the other. I timed it." Ro looks afraid, and I think he's going to bolt. "Ro," I say, "I don't want to die here. I can't do this by myself, and I need you to help me." His eyes scan my face, like he's looking for any sign that I'm kidding. He won't find one. He swallows and gives the slightest nod of his head. It's enough to let me know that I'm no longer alone.
Welcome back. Cooklet Delph is a real place a few minutes' walk from the centre of the modern-day village of Eyam. You follow a farm track from the edge of the village, then pass through a stile and follow a narrow track across a field. Finally, you break through a gap in the wall and emerge into a sort of fan-shaped grassy area surrounded by trees. To the left is an unusual rock formation that seems to be a narrow doorway into a cave. Below is a stream at the bottom of a steep drop. As the plague tore through the little village of Eyam in the autumn of 1665, the people there understood that it was transmitted by close personal contact with others. In the very first episode, I told you the story of how the plague was brought to the village by a tailor, George Vickers, who became the first victim in the village. The disease quickly spread to others in the house, then to the next house, and so on throughout the village. It was obvious that the plague spread from person to person in close proximity. The village rector, Reverend Mompesson, also understood that cramming people into his small church was an almost guaranteed way to spread the disease. But faith was important to his congregation, especially during such difficult times, so he closed the church and moved the services to Cucklet Delph. In this natural outdoor amphitheatre, families could worship together while maintaining a safe distance from others, and thus lowering the risk of infection. The Reverend Mompesson found a creative way to let his community practice their faith and keep them alive. Cucklet Delph was the site of another kind of meeting too. In the early days of the epidemic, the real Emmott Syddall did break quarantine to meet her fiancé, Roland Torre, in secret at Cucklet Delph. But she quickly came to realise that she was putting the lives of Roland and others outside the village at risk. And finally, Emmott told Roland she had to stop coming to meet him. Later in the series, I'll tell you the ending of the real Emmott and Roland story. Although my Emmott story is based only loosely on the truth, I don't want to give anything away too soon. All I will say is that, in the true story, Emmett's decision to put others before herself undoubtedly saved the lives of many, including the people she loved. So, as hard as our current lockdown and social distancing continues to be, we all have to keep keeping our distance for ourselves, for those we love, and for strangers too. Next week, Em tries to save the life of someone she loves. Plus, I'll be talking about the power of human touch, something I suspect we're all missing right about now. So until next week, stay safe. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Smallest Thing. To make sure you don't miss next week's episode, you can subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more. If you'd like to support the show, please leave a review and share this series with others you think might enjoy it. If you're on Instagram, tag me there at LisaManterfield_, or follow me on Facebook at author Lisa Manterfield and Twitter at Lisa Manterfield. My newsletter subscribers are always the first to know about my news, events, upcoming releases, giveaways, and more. Sign up for monthly delivery at lisamanterfield.com/subscribe and get your complimentary copy of Love, Loss and Letting Go, 3 of my short stories. Thanks to Justin Joseph for producing and editing this show, and to Ketsa.uk for the music. That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening.